Marcus Reed sprawls face down on Alabama's cracked asphalt, blood oozing from his temple. Sheriff Travis Boone's boot grinding his neck as the gun hovers inches from his skull. Hours ago, he was driving home from a Pentagon briefing, a routine night. Now his defiance fuels Boone's racist fury, a misstep hinting at disaster. Marcus whispers, "You'll regret this," fingers brushing his phone. What flipped a simple stop into this brutal showdown, with echoes that could shatter his life? Before we dive in, let us know where you're watching from, and if you stand for justice against corruption, hit like and subscribe, because tomorrow's explosive episode is one you can't miss. Marcus Reed gripped the leather steering wheel of his sleek grey SUV, the hum of its engine slicing through the stillness of a moonlit Alabama highway. The clock on the dashboard glowed 11:30, and the air outside hung heavy with the scent of pine and damp earth. He'd just left a grueling Pentagon briefing in Montgomery, hours of dissecting drone surveillance tech with top brass, his mind still buzzing from the weight of classified maps and strategic timelines. At 55, his broad shoulders and steady hands bore the quiet strength of a retired Air Force colonel, now a consultant who'd seen more war zones than he cared to count. His dark eyes, framed by faint crow's feet, stayed locked on the road ahead, the yellow lines blurring into a hypnotic rhythm. He was 30 miles from Birmingham, from the comfort of his wife Tanya's cooking and his son Jamal's laughter, when a flicker in the rearview mirror jolted him alert. Red and blue lights pulsed like a predator's eyes, closing fast. Marcus exhaled slow, a muscle twitching in his jaw. This wasn't new, not for a black man driving alone at night, not in a state where history clung like rust to every back road. He flicked on his blinker, easing the SUV onto the gravel shoulder, tires crunching as he stopped. Both hands stayed firm on the wheel, 10 and 2, a habit drilled into him since his first license at 16, reinforced by decades of cautionary tales. The police cruiser screeched to a halt behind him, its siren cutting off mid-wail, leaving an eerie silence. Marcus kept his breathing even, watching through the side mirror as two figures emerged. Sheriff Travis Boone stepped into the glow of the SUV's taillights, a hulking silhouette at 6'4", his buzz cut glinting under the moon, his pale eyes glinting colder than the steel badge pinned to his chest. Beside him, slunk Deputy Lyle Hayes, wiry and hunched, his thin lips curling into a twitchy grin that showed too many teeth. Boone's boots thudded closer, each step deliberate, his meaty hand resting on the holster at his hip. Hayes flanked the passenger side, fingers drumming a nervous beat on his belt. Marcus rolled down the window, letting the cool night air rush in, carrying the faint tang of gasoline and Boone's cheap cologne. Boone leaned in close, his shadow swallowing the light, and barked, "Get out of the vehicle now!" His voice was gravelly, thick with authority and something darker, a sneer lurking beneath the words. Marcus met his gaze, unflinching, and kept his tone low, measured. "Can I ask why I'm being stopped?" Boone's lips twisted, a flash of yellowed, teeth showing through. Broken taillight, out now. Marcus's pulse quickened, but his face stayed stone. He knew the lie as soon as it landed. His SUV was pristine, checked weekly, every bulb intact. He'd driven this stretch 100 times. Never a ticket, never a slip. This wasn't about traffic laws. This was about the gray SUV, the black, man behind the wheel, the audacity of existing in Boone's County after dark. Marcus shifted, hands still visible, and said, "I'd like to see the evidence of that." Boone's fist slammed down on the hood, the metal ringing out like a gunshot in the quiet night, his face reddening as he leaned closer, breath hot with stale coffee. "You don't ask questions, boy," I said out. "So move your ass before I make you." The slur wasn't spoken, but it hung in the air, sharp as a blade. Hayes snickered, shifting his weight, eyes darting between Marcus and Boone like a hyena waiting for scraps. Marcus weighed his options, years of military training flashing through his mind. Stay calm, don't give them an excuse. He could feel the weight of their stares, the unspoken threat in Boone's clenched jaw, the way Hayes's hand hovered near his own gun. Slowly, deliberately, Marcus unbuckled his seatbelt, the click loud in the tense silence, and opened the door. He stepped out, rising to his full height, 6'2", his frame solid from years of discipline, dwarfing Hayes and matching Boone's bulk. The sheriff's eyes narrowed, a flicker of surprise quickly masked by contempt. Marcus stood tall, hands loose at his sides, his dark jacket catching the faint breeze. Boone took a step closer, chest puffed, and shoved Marcus hard in the shoulder, a meaty palm smacking against muscle. "You deaf! I said move!" Marcus stumbled half a step, then planted his feet, his voice steady as steel. "I'm complying, no need for force." Boone's sneer widened, a predator sensing resistance, and he drew his pistol in one fluid motion, the black barrel glinting as he leveled it at Marcus's chest. "You don't tell me what's needed, boy. Hands up now, or I paint this road. With you." Hayes stepped forward, his grin splitting wider, a high-pitched giggle escaping as he cracked his knuckles. Marcus's heart thudded, not from fear but from a simmering rage he'd buried too many times before. He'd faced enemy fire in deserts half a world away, stared down death in cockpits and command tents. But this was different. This was home Alabama soil, and the gun aimed at him wasn't foreign, it was American, wielded by a man sworn to protect. His mind raced, cataloging every detail, Boone's finger twitching on the trigger, Hayes's eager bounce, the cruiser's lights, casting jagged shadows. He raised his hands slow, palms open, eyes locked on Boone's, refusing to blink. "I'm not resisting," Marcus said, each word clipped, deliberate. Boone's nostrils flared, his grip tightening on the gun, the barrel inches from Marcus's sternum. "Down on your knees, now." Marcus didn't move, not yet, his gaze boring into Boone's, a silent challenge that made the sheriff's face twist with fury. "Have you got a problem hearing me?" Boone roared, spit flecking Marcus's cheek. Hayes circled closer, his boots scuffing the gravel, ready to pounce. Marcus took a breath, deep and slow, feeling the night chill seep into his bones. He'd trained for this, not in war but in life. Every black man's unwritten manual: stay alive, don't provoke, wait for the moment. But something in Boone's eyes, wild and unhinged, told him waiting might not be enough. "I'm a citizen," Marcus said, voice low, firm. "I've broken no laws." Boone's laugh was a harsh bark, echoing off the trees. "Citizen? You're—" "Nothing here. Knees now or I drop you." The gun pressed closer, cold metal brushing Marcus's jacket, a promise of violence humming in the air. Marcus's mind spun, calculating. He could take Boone, maybe Hayes too, years of combat muscle memory itching in his fists. But the gun changed the math. He lowered himself, slow, controlled, one knee hitting the gravel, then the other, hands still raised. Boone towered over him, triumphant, the pistol hovering above Marcus's skull. "That's right," Boone growled, his voice dripping with venom. "Know your place." Hayes clapped, a sharp, mocking sound, his grin stretching ear to ear. Marcus knelt there, the rough stones biting into his knees, blood pulsing in his ears, but his eyes never left Boone's. Inside, a fire roared, not fear, not surrender, but a vow this wasn't over. He'd faced worse odds, toppled bigger tyrants, and this petty sheriff, this racist relic, had no idea who he'd just crossed. The night stretched taut, a coiled spring ready to snap, and Marcus waited, plotting his next move, as Boone's shadow swallowed him whole. Marcus Reed knelt on the gritty Alabama highway, the sharp gravel digging into his knees, his dark eyes locked on Sheriff Travis Boone's snarling face as the pistol hovered inches above his skull. The night air bit at his skin, but the heat of Boone's rage burned hotter, his thick finger twitching on the trigger. Deputy Lyle Hayes circled like a vulture, his wiry frame jittering with glee, his boots scuffing the dirt as he waited for blood. Boone's lips curled back, baring teeth stained by years of cheap tobacco, and he swung the gun's butt down hard, cracking it against Marcus's temple. Pain exploded in a white-hot flash, blood trickling warm and sticky down his cheek, dripping onto the asphalt in dark splotches. Marcus grunted, his head snapping sideways, but he didn't fall. His broad shoulders squared, his hands still raised in defiance. Boone roared, "Stay down, you piece of trash!" His voice a guttural snarl that echoed off the pines lining the road. Hayes darted to the grey SUV, yanking the passenger door open with a screech of metal, and began tearing through the interior, gloved hands tossing papers into the muddy shoulder like confetti. Registration, receipts, a folded map from the Pentagon briefing, all scattered in the dirt, smeared with grime. Marcus's voice cut through the chaos, low and steady, despite the throbbing in his skull. "You've got no right to search my vehicle." Boone laughed, a harsh barking sound, and planted his boot in Marcus's ribs, sending him sprawling face first into the pavement. "Rights? You don't get rights here, boy." The kick stole Marcus's breath, pain lancing through his side. But he caught a glint in the mud, his Pentagon ID card gold-embossed and pristine, half buried under Boone's heel. The sheriff didn't see it, too busy savoring his power, his chest heaving with triumph. Marcus's fingers twitched, itching to grab it, but Boone's gun stayed trained on him, a black promise of death. Hayes popped back out of the SUV, holding up a crumpled fast food bag like a trophy, grinning wide. "Nothing good, boss, just junk," Boone sneered, stepping back, and keyed his radio with a meaty thumb. "Dispatch. Got a blackmail, resisting arrest, possible contraband, send backup." The lie rolled off his tongue, smooth as oil, his pale eyes glinting with malice. Marcus pushed himself up to his knees, blood streaking his face, and locked eyes with Boone. "That's a fabrication. I've done nothing." Boone's smirk faltered for a split second, then hardened, and he kicked Marcus again, this time in the chest, forcing him back down with a thud. "Shut your mouth before I—" "Shut it permanent." Marcus coughed, tasting copper, but his mind raced, sharp as ever. He'd faced ambushes in Iraq, outsmarted warlords in Kabul, and this thug in a badge wasn't going to break him. His left hand slid into his jacket pocket, slow, subtle, closing around his phone. Boone was too busy gloating, pacing like a king, while Hayes kicked at the SUV's tires, giggling to himself. Marcus tapped the screen, muscle memory guiding his thumb to General Laura Pierce's number, a lifeline forged through decades of trust. The call connected, her crisp voice crackling through the speaker before he muted it fast. "Marcus, what's the situation?" He kept his head down, blood dripping onto his lap, and murmured, "Laura, I'm on Highway 12, stopped by a sheriff, Travis Boone. He's assaulting me, no cause." Her reply came sharp, urgent. "Stay calm, I'm escalating this now, hold on." Boone's head snapped around, catching the faint hum of the call, and he lunged forward, meaty hands snatching the phone from Marcus's grip. "Who you talking to, huh?" He squinted at the cracked screen, Pierce's name glowing, then smashed it against the SUV's hood, plastic splintering into the night. "No fancy friend's gonna save you, boy," Boone spat, his voice thick with venom, his boot grinding Marcus's ID deeper into the mud. Marcus wiped blood from his lip, a faint smirk tugging at his mouth despite the pain. "Too late, Sheriff." "She heard everything." Boone's face twisted, a mix of confusion and fury, his pistol swinging back up to Marcus's forehead, the cold barrel pressing into his skin. "You think some desk jockey's gonna scare me? This is my road, my rules." Hayes froze, his grin fading, eyes darting between them, sensing the shift. Marcus held Boone's gaze, unflinching, his voice a quiet blade. "She's not a desk jockey. She's a general." Boone's finger tightened on the trigger, his breath hitching, but before he could act, a distant wail pierced the night, sirens swelling fast from the south. Hayes spun, peering down the highway, his twitchy hands fumbling for his own gun. "Boss, that's not our boys." Boone's eyes widened, a flicker of doubt cracking his bravado, but he shoved the pistol harder against Marcus's skull. "Don't matter who's coming. You're mine till then." Marcus stayed still, blood pooling beneath him, his ribs screaming with every breath, but inside, a fire roared. He'd planted the seed, Pierce was moving, and Boone's little kingdom was about to tremble. The sirens grew louder, red and blue lights flashing on the horizon, a promise of rescue or reckoning. Marcus couldn't tell which yet. Boone's jaw clenched, his control slipping, and he barked at Hayes, "Get ready, we ain't done with him." Marcus watched the lights close in, his mind already 3 steps ahead, knowing this was just the beginning of a war he hadn't asked for, but wouldn't lose. What do you think about a sheriff thinking he's untouchable just because of a badge? Comment number 1. If you've ever seen power misused like this, and smash that like button if Marcus's grit has you rooting for him. Don't forget to subscribe, because tomorrow we're diving deeper into this fight for justice. Could those sirens really turn the tide? Or is Boone about to unleash something even uglier? Stick around to find out what's barreling down that highway. Next. Marcus Reed crouched on the Alabama highway, blood crusting on his temple, his chest throbbing from Sheriff Travis Boone's boot as the wail of sirens grew louder, cutting through the humid night. Red and blue lights flashed closer, painting, the pines in jagged streaks, and Boone's pistol wavered, still pressed against Marcus's forehead, his thick knuckles white with strain. Deputy Lyle Hayes spun toward the approaching vehicle, his wiry frame twitching, his voice cracking as he muttered, "Boss, that ain't our backup." Boone's pale eyes narrowed, sweat beading on his buzz-cut scalp, but he didn't lower the gun, his breath hot and ragged. "Don't matter, he's ours till I say." Marcus stayed still, gravel biting into his palms, his dark gaze steady, despite the pain pulsing through his skull. The cruiser screeched to a halt, tires spitting. Dust and a state trooper stepped out, a lean figure in a crisp uniform, no older than 30, his fair skin glowing under the floodlights. His badge glinted, reading Trooper Ellis, and his hand rested on his holster as he strode forward, boots crunching with purpose. Boone straightened, puffing his chest, but kept the barrel trained on Marcus, a king refusing to yield his throne. Ellis stopped 10 feet away, his sharp green eyes flicking between the sheriff, the deputy, and the bloodied man on the ground. "What's going on here?" His voice was firm, clipped, a hint of unease threading through it. Marcus seized the moment, pushing up to one knee, his voice hoarse but clear. "Sheriff Boone stopped me without cause, assaulted me, searched my vehicle illegally. I'm a Pentagon consultant, just called my superior." Boone's gun jerked, his face twisting with fury, but Ellis raised a hand, palm out. "Lower the weapon, Sheriff, now!" Boone's lips peeled back in a snarl, spit flecking the air. "This is my county, kid." He resisted, got what he deserved. Marcus wiped, blood from his cheek, his tone cutting like a blade. "That's a lie. Check his radio log, my SUV, his hands. Evidence don't match his story." Ellis hesitated, his jaw tightening, then stepped closer, peering at the scattered papers in the mud, the dented hood of Marcus's gray SUV. Boone's bravado flickered, his gun dipping an inch, and Ellis barked, "I said lower it. Hands where I can see 'em, both of you." Hayes froze, his twitchy grin fading, hands hovering awkwardly. Boone glared, but the trooper's unblinking stare forced his arm down, the pistol sliding back into its holster with a reluctant click. Ellis pulled cuffs from his belt, the metal glinting as he advanced on Boone. "Sheriff Travis Boone, you're under arrest for excessive force pending investigation." The cuffs snapped around Boone's wrists, his massive frame tensing as the steel bit into his skin. Marcus rose, wincing as his ribs screamed, a flood of relief washing over him. Justice felt close, tangible, the weight of Boone's tyranny, lifting for a fleeting moment. Ellis nodded to him, curt but respectful. "You all right to stand, sir?" Marcus straightened, towering over the scene, blood streaking his jacket. "I'll manage. Get him out of here." Boone's head snapped up, his eyes burning into Marcus, but his mouth stayed shut, a coiled snake waiting to strike. Ellis shoved him toward the cruiser, Hayes trailing like a scolded dog, his wiry hands stuffed in his pockets. Marcus leaned against his SUV, breathing shallow, the cool metal grounding him as the trooper secured Boone in the back seat. The sheriff's glare never wavered, piercing through the glass, a silent vow of vengeance. Ellis returned, wiping sweat from his brow, and muttered, "I'll need your statement, but this looks bad for him." Marcus nodded, hope flickering, thinking Pierce's call had turned the tide. Then Boone's voice hissed from the cruiser, low and venomous, just loud enough for Hayes to hear. "Call Montgomery. Tell him it's me." Hayes fumbled for his radio, stepping away, his twitchy fingers keying it fast. Marcus caught the movement, a chill creeping up his spine, but before he could speak, Ellis's radio crackled to life, a gruff voice cutting through. "Trooper Ellis, stand down. Release Sheriff Boone immediately. Orders from the Capitol." Ellis froze, his young face paling, disbelief etching lines across his forehead. "Sir, he assaulted a civilian. I've got probable cause." The voice snapped back, sharp as a whip. "You heard me. Uncuff him, now." Marcus's gut twisted, the air thickening with betrayal. Ellis hesitated, his hand hovering over the cuffs, then sighed, defeated, and unlocked Boone's wrists. The sheriff stepped out, rolling his shoulders, a slow, triumphant grin splitting his face. "Told you, kid. My county, my rules." Ellis avoided Marcus's eyes, mumbling, "Sorry, sir. My hands are tied." Boone stretched, cracking his knuckles, and turned to Marcus, his bulk looming closer. "Thought you'd won, huh?" Before Marcus could react, Boone lunged, slamming him against the SUV's side, the impact jarring his fractured rib with a sickening crunch. Marcus gasped, pain blinding him, his knees buckling as Boone's fist sank into his gut, doubling him over. "That's for wasting my time," Boone growled, his breath hot on Marcus's ear. Hayes giggled, hopping closer, his wiry frame buzzing with glee. Boone stepped back, dusting his hands, and barked, "Get out of my sight, trooper." Ellis climbed into his cruiser, head low, and peeled away, tires spitting gravel, leaving Marcus slumped against the SUV, blood pooling anew from his reopened temple. Boone towered over him, his grin widening, a predator savoring the kill. "You're gonna wish you never pulled over, boy. This ain't over." Hayes kicked a clump of mud at Marcus's legs, splattering his pants, and cackled, "Shoulda stayed. Quiet, big man." Marcus clutched his side, each breath a knife, his dark eyes burning into Boone's. He'd thought the sirens meant salvation, Pierce's reach breaking through, but Montgomery's invisible strings had yanked it away. Boone's power wasn't just local. It was rooted deep, a network of corruption flexing its muscle. The sheriff adjusted his badge, gleaming under the cruiser's lights, and sauntered back to his vehicle, Hayes trailing like a shadow. Marcus staggered upright, leaning on the SUV, his fractured rib grinding with every move. The night swallowed the trooper's taillights, leaving him alone with the hum of crickets and the sting of defeat. Boone's cruiser idled, its engine a low growl, a promise of worse to come. Marcus spat blood onto the asphalt, his mind racing despite the pain. He'd underestimated Boone, assumed a badge and a gun were his only weapons, but this was bigger. A machine with gears he couldn't yet see. Pierce's voice echoed in his head, "Hold on," but holding on felt like clinging to smoke. Boone's parting glance through the windshield was a dagger, sharp and personal, a vow to crush him completely. Marcus steadied himself, wiping blood from his chin, his resolve hardening like steel. He'd survived wars, outlasted dictators, and this petty tyrant wouldn't bury him. The highway stretched empty before him, the night pressing in, and he knew the next blow would hit harder, a storm brewing beyond the pines. Marcus Reed slumped against his gray SUV, the Alabama night pressing in thick and heavy, his fractured rib grinding with every shallow breath as blood crusted on his temple from Sheriff Travis Boone's earlier blows. The state trooper's taillights had vanished down the highway, leaving him alone with the hum of crickets and the ache of betrayal after Montgomery's override freed Boone. The sheriff's cruiser idled nearby, its engine a low snarl, and Boone stepped out, his hulking frame casting a shadow that swallowed the moonlight. His buzz cut gleamed with sweat, his pale eyes glinting with malice as he loomed over Marcus, meaty hands flexing. "Thought you'd slip away, huh?" Boone growled, his voice dripping with venom, a predator back in control. Deputy Lyle Hayes hopped out behind him, wiry and buzzing, his twitchy grin splitting wide as he cracked his knuckles. Boone grabbed Marcus by the collar, yanking him off the SUV with a grunt, the sudden jolt spiking pain through his side. Marcus stumbled, catching himself, but Boone didn't pause, dragging him toward the patrol car like a hunter hauling prey. "You're done playing hero," Boone spat, his breath hot with tobacco and spite. Marcus twisted, his dark eyes flashing defiance despite the agony, but Boone's grip tightened, bruising his neck. Hayes scurried ahead, popping the cruiser's back door open, giggling as Boone shoved Marcus forward. The sheriff's free hand slipped into his pocket, pulling out a small plastic bag, white powder glinting inside, and with a flick of his wrist, he stuffed it into Marcus's jacket pocket, patting it down hard. "Look what we got here, Boone." said loud enough for the radio to catch, his grin twisting into something feral. Marcus's pulse surged, his voice hoarse but firm. "That's planted. You won't get away with this." Boone laughed, a deep guttural sound, and slammed Marcus against the cruiser's side, the metal rattling as his fractured ribs screamed. "Get away with it? I already have." Hayes darted back to the SUV, kicking mud over the scattered papers, then rejoined Boone, his eyes gleaming with glee. Boone keyed his radio, his tone mock-official. "Dispatch, suspects got narcotics, armed and dangerous, taking him in." The lie crackled through the static, smooth and practiced, a noose, tightening around Marcus's neck. They shoved him into the back seat, the door slamming shut with a clang that echoed in his ears, the stale smell of sweat and rust filling the cramped space. Boone climbed into the driver's seat, Hayes beside him, and the cruiser lurched forward, tires crunching gravel as they sped toward the station. Marcus sat cuffed, the metal biting his wrists, his mind racing despite the pain. He'd faced traps before, outsmarted enemies in war zones, but this was a different battlefield, one where the law bent to Boone's will. The station loomed ahead, a squat brick building under flickering sodium lights, and Boone hauled Marcus out, dragging him through the doors into a haze of cigarette smoke and mildew. Deputies glanced up from desks, their faces blank or smirking. No questions asked. Boone tossed Marcus into a cell, the iron bars clanging shut, the lock clicking with finality. "No phone, no lawyer, no nothing," Boone sneered, leaning close, his bulk filling the doorway. "You're just another thug now." Marcus stood tall, blood streaking his jacket, and met Boone's gaze. "I'm a Pentagon colonel. This won't hold." Boone's laugh boomed, bouncing off the concrete walls. "A black colonel? Sure you are, boy. Tell it to the judge." Hayes snickered, twirling a pen as he typed up a report, fingers dancing over keys. "Drug bust, armed suspect, resisted arrest," he muttered, the words a twisted script sealing Marcus's fate. Boone stepped back, crossing his arms, his badge glinting like a trophy. Marcus paced the cell, 3 steps wide, the cold floor seeping through his boots, his fractured rib a constant stab. He overheard Boone in the hall, voice low, talking to a man in a suit. "Judge Hargrove, need this pushed through fast. Cash is on the way." The man grunted assent, footsteps fading. Marcus's jaw clenched, rage simmering beneath his calm exterior. Boone wasn't just a rogue cop, he was a cog in a machine, greasing wheels with blood money, the cell's loan. Guard, a lanky kid with nervous eyes, lingered near the bars, glancing at Boone's retreating back. Marcus caught his gaze, voice low. "You know this is wrong." The guard flinched, then slipped a burner phone through the bars, whispering, "Someone called for you, said it's urgent." Marcus palmed it, heart pounding, recognizing General Laura Pierce's handiwork. He dialed her number, the line buzzing once before her crisp voice answered. "Marcus, you still alive?" He kept it quiet, back to the bars. "Barely. Boone's framing me, drugs, the works, bribed a judge." Pierce's tone hardened, a steel edge he knew from combat briefings. "I've got feds moving. Sit tight, we'll bust this open." Marcus nodded, hope flaring, but before he could reply, Boone's boots thudded back, his shadow filling the cell block. "What's that?" Boone barked, lunging forward, his meaty hand snatching the phone from Marcus's grip. He squinted at the screen, Pierce's name glowing, and snapped it in two, plastic cracking like gunfire. "You don't learn, do you?" Boone roared, slamming Marcus against the bars, his fractured rib crunching louder, pain blinding him as... He gasped, "I'll bury you so deep no one'll dig you up." Hayes peeked in, giggling. "He's toast, boss." Boone stepped back, wiping his hands on his pants, his grin savage. "Sleep tight, Colonel. Tomorrow, you're nobody." He turned, swaggering out, leaving Marcus slumped against the bars, blood dripping anew from his lip. The guard shrank away, guilt in his eyes, but said nothing. Marcus sank to the bench, every breath a struggle, his mind spinning. Pierce was coming, feds were on the move, but Boone's machine was already rolling, grinding him down. The cell. Walls closed in, the flickering light buzzing overhead, and he clenched his fists, nails digging into his palms. He'd survived worse, outlasted dictators, and this corrupt sheriff wouldn't break him. But the bag in his pocket, the lies on Hayes's report, The judge's greased palms, they were chains tightening, and time was slipping. The night stretched on, a suffocating shroud, and Marcus waited, plotting, knowing Boone's next move would hit harder, a storm brewing beyond these bars. Ever wonder how far a badge can twist the truth? Comment number 1 if you think Boone's frame job is pure cowardice, and hit like if Marcus's fight keeps you hooked. Subscribe now because this story's heating up fast. What happens when the feds clash with Boone's dirty empire? Will Marcus walk free, or is the sheriff's next strike already in motion? Stay tuned to see how this explodes. Marcus Reed sat on the cold bench of his Alabama cell, the iron bars casting jagged shadows across his blood-streaked jacket, his fractured rib a constant throb as the flickering light buzzed overhead. Sheriff Travis Boone's frame job weighed heavy, the planted drugs in his pocket a ticking bomb, the lies on Deputy Lyle Hayes's report a noose tightening with every passing hour. The station's stale air reeked of mildew and cigarette ash, the distant clack of keyboards a grim soundtrack. To his confinement, Boone's hulking figure had vanished down the hall after snapping Marcus's burner phone, his parting grin a promise of ruin, but the echo of General Laura Pierce's voice lingered in Marcus's mind. Feds are moving. He clung to that. A lifeline in the dark, though the cell walls pressed closer, suffocating his hope. Footsteps thudded, heavy and deliberate, and Boone loomed back into view, his buzz cut glinting under the sodium glow, his pale eyes alight with a fresh malice. "Time to shine, boy," he sneered, unlocking the cell with a clang that rattled Marcus's skull. Hayes trailed him, wiry and jittering, clutching a phone, his twitchy grin wider than ever. Boone yanked Marcus up by the arm, the sudden jolt, spiking pain through his side, and shoved him toward the station's front, meaty hands bruising his shoulder. "Got a surprise for you," Boone growled, his breath hot with tobacco. Marcus stumbled into the lobby, blinking against the harsh light, and froze as a news van's floodlights blazed through the glass doors, illuminating a small crowd outside. A reporter, slick-haired and eager, stood with a microphone, a cameraman, at his side, lens trained on the entrance. Boone's grin twisted, feral and triumphant. "Local news loves a good bust. You're the star tonight." Before Marcus could speak, Boone dragged him outside, the night air hitting like a slap, the crowd's murmurs swelling into a dull roar. The reporter pounced, shoving the mic in Marcus's face as Boone held him firm, cuffs glinting on his wrists. "Sheriff Boone says you're a drug runner caught red-handed. What's your story?" Marcus straightened, blood crusting his lip, and met the camera's unblinking eye. "It's a lie. I'm a Pentagon colonel, framed by this man." Boone laughed, loud and harsh, cutting him off, his meaty hand clamping Marcus's neck. "Colonel? Sure, and I'm the governor. He's a thug, folks, plain and simple." The cameraman zoomed in, catching the blood, the cuffs, the planted bag peeking from Marcus's pocket, a perfect tableau of guilt. The reporter nodded, eating it up, and the story aired live, the feed crackling across Alabama screens, branding Marcus a criminal in real time. Boone shoved him back inside, the doors slamming shut, but the damage was done. Marcus caught a glimpse of the TV in the lobby, his face plastered across it, the headline screaming, "Drug bust shocks county. Suspect claims military ties." His stomach sank, a cold dread coiling tight. His legacy, 30 years of service, torched in seconds. Boone leaned close, his voice a low growl. "That's what happens when you cross me, boy. World knows you're nothing now." Hayes giggled, hopping from foot to foot, and handed Boone the phone, a text glowing. "Feeds. Viral. Good work." Marcus sank against the wall, the concrete cold through his jacket, his mind reeling. His daughter's face flashed in his head. Jamal's, too. Tanya's voice trembling when she'd see this. His phone, smashed by Boone, buzzed in his memory, and he pulled the guard's burner from his sock, hidden during the chaos. He tapped it alive, Pierce's number glowing, but before he could dial, the cell-block door swung open again. A new figure strode in, a federal agent in a crisp suit, badge flashing under the lights, his stern face set with purpose. "Marcus." "Reed?" he barked, eyes scanning the room. Marcus stood, hope surging, his voice steady despite the pain. "That's me." The agent glared at Boone, pulling papers from his coat. FBI, release him now. We've got jurisdiction. Boone's grin faltered, his bulk shifting, but he crossed his arms, defiant. On what grounds? The agent thrust the papers forward, voice like steel. Assault, false arrest, evidence tampering. Step aside, Sheriff. Marcus's chest loosened, relief flooding him as the agent uncuffed him, the metal falling away with a clink. Boone's eyes burned, but he stepped back, hands flexing, a coiled beast restrained. This ain't over, he muttered, low enough for only Marcus to hear. The agent escorted Marcus out, past the news van, the crowd parting, as he limped into the night, free air hitting his lungs. He thought it was done. Pierce's feds had broken Boone's grip, justice clawing back. But as he reached the highway's edge, a bottle sailed from the shadows, shattering at his feet, glass spraying his legs. A mob surged forward, faces twisted. With hate, voices screaming, drug scum. And go back where you came from. Another bottle flew, cracking against his shoulder, pain blooming fresh as fists swung from the crowd. Marcus ducked, shielding his face, blood trickling anew as rocks pelted his back. The agent shouted, drawing his gun, but the mob pressed closer. Fueled by Boone's lies, the viral feed igniting their rage. Marcus staggered, his fractured rib a white-hot spike, and spotted Boone's cruiser idling nearby. The sheriff's silhouette watching, a faint smirk visible through the windshield. The agent pulled him toward a black sedan, shoving him inside. As the mob hammered the windows, cracks spidering across the glass, the car peeled out, tires squealing, leaving the chaos behind, but Marcus's heart pounded, dread sinking deeper. Boone hadn't just framed him. He'd turned the world against him, a public execution by rumor. The agent muttered, "Pierce sent me. You're safe now." But Marcus stared out the window, the night blurring past, knowing safety was a lie. Boone's reach stretched beyond bars, beyond badges, a venom seeping into every corner of this county. His phone buzzed in his lap, Tanya's name flashing, her text a frantic string. "Saw the news, what's happening?" He typed back, fingers trembling. "I'm okay, coming home." But the words felt hollow. The mob's hate, Boone's smirk, the shattered bottles, they were a promise of worse to come. Marcus clenched his jaw, blood drying on his knuckles, his resolve hardening. He'd walked through fire before, faced down armies, and this sheriff's petty empire wouldn't bury him. But as the sedan sped toward Birmingham, the weight of public disgrace pressed down, a new battlefield opening wide, and he braced for the storm Boone was already brewing. Marcus Reed limped through the quiet streets of Birmingham, his fractured ribs stabbing with every step. The federal agent's black sedan dropping him off blocks from home as dawn painted the sky a bruised purple. Blood crusted his jacket from Sheriff Travis Boone's assaults, his temple throbbing, his shoulder bruised from the mob's bottles, the sting of public disgrace still raw after the viral news smear. The city hummed softly, a stark contrast to the chaos of the Alabama highway, but his chest tightened as he neared his modest two-story house, the porch light flickering like a beacon. He'd texted Tanya he was safe, but the weight of Boone's reach gnawed at him, a venom spreading beyond that cell. As he rounded the corner, acrid smoke hit his nose, sharp and bitter, and his heart lurched. The garage door hung open, flames licking its edges, black soot streaking the white siding. Slurs, jagged and red, screamed across the walls, "Get out!" and worse, the paint still wet, dripping like blood. Tanya stood on the lawn, her robe clutched tight, her dark eyes wide with fear, while Jamal, 16 and lanky, gripped a bat, his knuckles white. Marcus staggered forward, pain forgotten, and pulled them into his arms, their trembling bodies pressed against his battered frame. "What happened?" he rasped, voice hoarse from the night's ordeal. Tanya's voice shook, barely a whisper. "They came an hour ago, 3 men, masks, threw gas cans, lit it up and ran." Jamal's jaw clenched, his bat tapping the grass. "I tried to stop 'em, Dad, but they were fast." Marcus scanned the damage, the garage a smoldering ruin. His old Air Force gear reduced to ash, the slurs a knife in his gut. Boone's handiwork, no doubt, a retaliatory strike after the Fed's intervention. He kissed Tanya's forehead, then Jamal's, his voice steady despite the fire in his chest. "We're together, that's what matters. I'll fix this." Tanya nodded, tears brimming, and Jamal squared his shoulders, mirroring Marcus's. Resolve. Inside, the house smelled of smoke, the living room dim as Marcus sank onto the couch, ribs screaming. He dialed General Laura Pierce, her crisp voice answering fast. "Marcus, you're out." He kept it low, Tanya and Jamal hovering nearby. "Yeah, but Boone's goons torched my garage, targeted my family. This is war now." Pierce's tone hardened, a steel edge he knew well. "FBI's raiding his office today. We'll hit him hard. Stay put." Marcus hung up, relief flickering, and pulled Tanya close, Jamal pacing like a caged lion. Hours later, the TV blared, a breaking news alert cutting through the morning quiet. FBI storms Sheriff Boone's station. Corruption probe deepens. Agents in vests swarmed the screen, hauling files from Boone's office, his deputies scrambling. Marcus leaned forward, a grim smile tugging his lips. Pierce had delivered, Boone's empire cracking. He hugged Tanya tighter, whispering, "We've got him now." Jamal grinned, bat still in hand, hope lighting his eyes. Marcus exhaled, thinking the tide had turned, the feds raid a hammer to Boone's throne. Then the phone rang, shrill and jarring, shattering the moment. Tanya answered, her face paling as she listened, then handed it to Marcus, voice trembling. "It's Jamal's school." He took it, dread coiling tight, and a nasal voice snapped through, "Mr. Reed, this is Principal Carver. Jamal's suspended." Effective immediately. "Gang activity ties per the news. Don't bother appealing." The line clicked dead, and Marcus's hand shook, rage boiling over. He slammed the phone down, the crack echoing, and Jamal's bat clattered to the floor, his voice breaking. "Gang activity, that's bullshit, Dad." Tanya clutched Marcus's arm, her nails digging in, fear replacing hope. Boone's allies, burrowed deep in the system, had struck again, twisting the viral smear into a weapon against his son. Marcus stormed out, ribs be damned, and drove to the school, the Birmingham sun glaring off the windshield. Carver met him in the office. AEC, smug white man with thinning hair, his tie too tight, his smirk too wide. "Your boy's a risk, Reed. News says he's trouble. My hands are tied." Marcus towered over him, voice low, lethal. "You're punishing a kid for lies. Retract it, or I'll bury you." Carver leaned back, unfazed, his grin sharpening. "Take it up with the board. Good luck." Marcus's fists clenched, itching to wipe that smirk away, but he turned, storming out, knowing a fight here wouldn't win. As he reached his SUV, a brick sailed from nowhere, smashing the windshield, into a web of cracks, glass dusting his lap as he ducked. He spun, spotting a figure in a hoodie darting behind the school, Boone's stench all over it. Marcus gripped the wheel, blood pounding in his ears, the raid's victory souring fast. Boone wasn't cornered, he was clawing back, hitting where it hurt most, his family now pawns in this war. He drove home, glass crunching under his boots as he stepped out, Tanya and Jamal waiting, their faces etched with worry. The garage still smoldered, the slurs glaring, and Marcus pulled them close again, his voice a vow. "They won't break. Us, I'll end this." But the brick, the suspension, the fire, they were Boone's promise. A storm swelling beyond the FBI's reach, and Marcus braced for the next blow, knowing it had cut deeper, a blade aimed at his heart. Ever think of Sal? Sheriff could turn a whole town against one man. Comment number 1 if you're raging at Boone's cowardly hit on Marcus's family, and smash that like button if their strength keeps you locked in. Subscribe now, because this fight's about to ignite. Can Marcus trust his old allies to turn the tide? Or will Boone's next move shatter everything he's got left? Keep watching to see how this war explodes next. Marcus Reed sat on the edge of his Birmingham couch, the acrid stench of the torched garage seeping through the walls, his fractured rib a dull ache beneath the blood-streaked jacket he hadn't shed since Sheriff Travis Boone's latest strike. Tanya hovered nearby, her hands wringing a dish towel, her dark eyes shadowed with worry, while Jamal paced the living room, his teenage frame taut with fury over the school suspension Boone's allies had engineered. The TV flickered, replaying. The FBI raid on Boone's station, a fleeting victory now soured by the brick-shattered windshield, and the slurs painted across their home. Marcus's phone buzzed, a text from Captain Eli Grant, an old Air Force buddy. "Heard about the mess. Meet me at Rosie's Diner noon. I've got dirt on Boone." Marcus's jaw tightened, a spark of hope cutting through the haze. Eli, wiry and sharp-eyed, had flown with him in Desert Storm, a brother forged in fire. If anyone could help, it was him. He kissed Tanya's cheek, squeezed Jamal's shoulder, and drove off, glass crunching under his boots as he slid into the battered SUV, the cracked windshield a jagged reminder of Boone's reach. Rosie's diner sat off a quiet Birmingham street, its neon sign buzzing, the air thick with grease and coffee. Marcus stepped inside, ribs protesting, and spotted Eli at a corner booth, his lean frame hunched over a mug, his salt and pepper, hair cropped tight. Eli rose, clapping Marcus's back, his grip firm despite the years. "You look like hell, man," he said, voice low, warm. Marcus slid in, wincing, and muttered, "Feel worse. What you got?" Eli leaned close, his sharp eyes glinting, and pulled a folder from his jacket, sliding it across the table. "Boone's been dirty since day one. Bribes, beatings, planted evidence. I've got names, dates, witnesses. Testify with this, he's done." Marcus flipped it open, scanning pages of typed reports, grainy photos of Boone shaking hands with suited men, a ledger of cash drops. His pulse quickened, a lifeline in black ink. "This is gold, Eli. How'd you pull it?" Eli grinned, sipping his coffee. "Old habits. Kept tabs on scum like him after I retired. Let's nail him." Marcus nodded, relief washing over him. The weight of the past days lifting. They strategized over burgers, voices hushed, mapping a plan to hand the folder to Pierce's feds. Mid-bite, Eli excused himself, bathroom break, and slipped out of the booth, his mug steaming on the table. Marcus chewed slow, savoring the first calm moment in days, the folder a weapon in his hands. Then the diner door banged open, shattering. The quiet and Boone's deputies stormed in, 6 of them burly and grim, badges glinting under the fluorescent lights. Marcus tensed, ribs screaming as he stood, but they swarmed fast, boots thudding, hands grabbing his arms, twisting them back. "Marcus Reed, you're under arrest," the lead deputy barked, a squat man with a scarred lip, cuffing him tight, metal biting his wrists. Marcus struggled, voice sharp. "For what?" The deputy smirked, shoving him toward the door. "Assaulting Captain Eli Grant. He's pressing charges." Marcus's gut dropped, ice flooding his veins as the diner spun. "That's a lie. He's my friend." The deputy laughed, hauling him outside, the folder slipping to the floor, pages scattering under stomping boots. "Tell it to the judge, thug." They dragged him to a cruiser, the Birmingham sun glaring off the hood, and Marcus caught a glimpse through the window, Eli standing by the counter, head down, avoiding his gaze. The truth hit like a punch. Boone had bought him, turned a brother into a snake. The cruiser sped back to the station, Marcus cuffed in the back seat, rage boiling beneath his calm exterior. Boone waited in the cell block, his hulking frame filling the doorway, buzz cut gleaming, pale eyes alight with triumph. "Welcome back, boy," he sneered, shoving Marcus into the same cell, bars clanging shut. "Thought your pal would save. You cost me $5,000 to flip him." Marcus gripped the bars, knuckles whitening, his voice low, lethal. "You're a coward, Boone." The sheriff laughed, a deep rumble, and leaned close, breath hot with tobacco. "And you're a fool. Enjoy the view." He swaggered out, haze trailing, giggling as he typed up the fake assault charge. Marcus sank to the bench, ribs throbbing, betrayal cutting deeper than the pain. His phone buzzed in his pocket, Pierce's number, a lifeline he'd hidden from Boone's earlier search. He dialed fast, her crisp voice answering. "Marcus, where are you?" He kept it quiet, bars cold against his back. "Jail again. Boone framed me, paid off Eli. Tanya's in danger too." Pierce's tone sharpened, steel in every word. "I'm pulling you out. Feds are closing in. Hold tight." The call cut as Boone's boots echoed back, but Marcus hid the phone, face blank. Hours later, the cell block door swung open, Pierce herself striding in, flanked by agents, her grey suit crisp, her dark eyes blazing. "Release him now," she snapped, shoving papers at Boone, who'd rushed in, face reddening. "FBI override. You're done playing king." Boone glared, hands flexing, but stepped aside, the cell unlocking with a clang. Marcus limped out, Pierce steadying him, her grip firm. "You're safe," she said, but as they reached the station, doors a deputy's radio crackled. "Fire reported Reed residence." Marcus's heart stopped. Tanya's name a scream in his throat, and he bolted for Pierce's car, ribs be damned. They raced to Birmingham, smoke rising in the distance, and Marcus leapt out, sprinting to his street. The SUV sat ablaze in the driveway, flames licking the sky. Tanya and Jamal safe on the lawn, coughing, eyes wide. "Boone's men," Tanya gasped, clutching Jamal. Marcus pulled them close, the heat searing his face, his voice a vow. "He's finished." But the fire's roar mocked him, Boone's laughter echoing in his mind, a strike from afar that shattered his fleeting freedom. Pierce called agents to the scene, her face grim, but Marcus stared at the burning wreck, betrayal and rage forging. A new resolve. Boone wasn't just fighting him, he was torching everything he loved, and the war had just begun. Marcus Reed stood on his Birmingham lawn, the heat of his burning SUV searing his face. Flames licking the night sky as Tanya clung to his arm, her coughs ragged from smoke, and Jamal gripped his shoulder, eyes wide with fury. The stench of gasoline and melted rubber choked the air, a brutal echo of Sheriff Travis Boone's latest strike, torching their driveway hours after Captain Eli Grant's betrayal landed Marcus back in jail. General Laura Pierce barked orders, to feds swarming the scene, her grey suit stark against the firelight. But Marcus's blood boiled, his fractured rib a dull ache beneath a rage that drowned out the pain. Boone had hit his family again, turned a brother against him, and the law's slow grind wasn't enough anymore. He kissed Tanya's forehead, squeezed Jamal's hand, and muttered, "Stay with Pierce. I'm ending this." Tanya's voice broke. "Marcus, no." But his dark eyes burned, unyielding, and he slipped into the shadows, ribs screaming as he moved. He knew Boone's haunts from Eli's folder, a dive bar on the city's edge, a den of cronies and corruption. The drive was a blur. His battered SUV swapped for Pierce's sedan, the cracked windshield swapped for tinted glass, his mind locked on one goal. He parked a block away, the bar's neon sign buzzing. Red Dog Saloon, its grimy windows, spilling yellow light onto the street. Marcus limped inside, the reek of stale beer and sweat hitting him, his jacket hiding the bloodstains, his phone tucked in his pocket, recording live. Boone sat at the back, hulking over a table, buzz-cut, glinting pale eyes laughing as he bragged to a circle of roughnecks. "Frame that black bastard good. Burned his medals too. They all break eventually." Marcus's fists clenched, nails digging into his palms, and he stepped closer, voice low, cutting through the din. "Not me, Boone." The sheriff's head snapped up, his grin faltering, then widening, a predator spotting prey. "Well, look who's dumb enough to show up." The roughnecks chuckled, chairs scraping as they rose. But Marcus held his ground, ribs throbbing, his phone catching every word. "You're a coward, hitting my family, buying my friends. Say it again, loud." Boone stood, towering, his meaty hand slamming the table, bottles rattling. "I break scum like you for fun. Torched your house, your kids next." Marcus's lips curled, a cold smile, and he tapped his pocket, the recording live streaming to a cloud Pierce could access. "Keep talking, Sheriff. World's listening." Boone's eyes narrowed, confusion flickering, but his ego roared louder, and he leaned close, breath hot with whiskey. "I've buried dozens of you, planted drugs, cracked skulls, and no one stops me." The bar hushed, the roughnecks shifting, sensing a shift. Marcus stepped back, uploading the file with a swipe, and within minutes his phone buzzed, notifications exploding, the stream going viral. Boone's words hit screens across Alabama. Outrage igniting online, hashtags flaring, Boone exposed. Marcus grinned, a fleeting triumph, and slipped out as the bar's TV flicked to breaking news. Sheriff Boone caught bragging about corruption. Protesters flooded Boone's station by dawn, chants shaking the brick walls, signs waving. "Justice for Reed," Pierce called, voice sharp. "You did it, Marcus. He's suspended, effective now." Marcus drove home, ribs aching, and hugged Tanya tight, Jamal beaming, the fire's ashes cooling in the driveway. "We've won," he whispered, relief washing over him. The mob's hate flipped to support. But as night fell, headlights pierced. The dark, a dozen masked men spilling onto his lawn, Boone leading them, off-duty and feral, his badge gone but his fury unleashed. They charged, bats swinging, and Marcus shoved Tanya and Jamal inside, locking the door as glass shattered, a window exploding inward. Boone's fist caught Marcus's jaw, splitting his lip anew, and the mob swarmed, boots stomping, fists raining. Down. Marcus fought back, years of combat surging, landing a punch that cracked a thug's nose, blood spraying, but they overwhelmed him, dragging him to the grass. Boone knelt, his weight crushing Marcus's chest, his voice a snarl. "Suspension don't stop me, boy, you'll beg me to end it." A bat slammed Marcus's knee, pain blinding him, and they yanked Jamal out, cuffing him with zip ties, his screams piercing the night. Tanya's cries echoed as Boone's men torched Marcus's Air Force medals, the metal melting into the lawn, a final gut punch. Boone stood, kicking Marcus's ribs, fracturing another, and tossed a burner phone at him. "Call your feds now. Hero." The mob vanished, Jamal gone, the house smoldering, and Marcus crawled to Tanya, blood pooling beneath him, his voice a broken vow. "I'll get him back." Pierce's line rang, her voice frantic. "Marcus, what's happening?" He gasped. "Boone took Jamal, burned everything. Send help." She swore, "We're coming." But the line cut, static swallowing hope. Marcus clutched Tanya, his knee swelling, ribs shattered, rage and despair warring in his chest. Boone's suspension had unleashed a monster, not a man, and this war had turned personal, a vendetta carved in fire and blood. He staggered up, limping to the sedan, his phone dead, the night pressing in, and swore to hunt Boone down, law or no law, Father's wrath now his weapon. Marcus Reed knelt on his Birmingham lawn, blood pooling beneath him from Sheriff Travis Boone's brutal mob attack, his fractured ribs screaming, his knee swelling where a bat had struck, the night thick with the stench of burned medals and Tanya's stifled sobs beside him. Jamal's scream still echoed in his ears, his 16-year-old son zip-tied and dragged off by Boone's masked thugs, a savage retaliation after Marcus's viral recording got the sheriff suspended. The house smoldered, windows shattered, and Pierce's sedan sat untouched, a lifeline in the chaos. Marcus staggered up, pain blinding him, and pulled Tanya close, her trembling hands clutching his jacket. "I'll find him," he rasped, voice raw, a father's vow cutting through despair. She nodded, tears streaking her face, and he limped to the car, ribs grinding, blood dripping onto the grass. He'd planted a tracker in Jamal's shoe months ago, a paranoid habit from war zones, and now it glowed on his phone, a faint signal pinging 10 miles north, an abandoned mill off Highway 12. Marcus floored the sedan, tires squealing, the Birmingham skyline fading as he sped into the dark, pines blurring past, his fractured body fueled by rage. The mill loomed ahead, a crumbling hulk of brick and rust, its windows black, the trackers, dot steady inside. He parked 100 yards out, cutting the lights, and slipped a tire iron from the trunk, his only weapon, its cold weight steadying his shaking hands. The night buzzed with crickets, the air damp with rot, and Marcus crept forward, ribs stabbing with every step, his swollen knee buckling but holding. Voices drifted from the mill, low and rough, Boone's thugs lounging inside, their shadows, flickering through broken panes. Marcus circled, spotting 2 guards at the door, burly men in hoodies, one cradling a shotgun, the other a bat. Jamal's muffled shouts pierced the quiet. "Let me go!" And Marcus's blood surged, a roar, in his ears. He lunged from the shadows, tire iron swinging, cracking the shotgun thug's skull with a wet thud, blood spraying as he crumpled. The bat guy spun, swinging wild, but Marcus ducked, ribs flaring, and drove the iron into his gut, doubling him over, then smashed his temple, dropping him silent. He kicked the shotgun aside, panting, pain a white-hot haze, and slipped inside, the mill's air thick with dust and mildew. Jamal sat tied to a chair in the center, zip ties cutting his wrists, his face bruised, eyes wide with fear that turned to relief. "Dad," he hissed, voice cracking. Marcus rushed over, tire iron clattering as he cut the ties with a pocket knife, pulling Jamal into a fierce hug, his son's trembling frame grounding him. "You're safe," he whispered, but footsteps thudded, more thugs closing in, alerted by the scuffle. Marcus grabbed Jamal's arm, dragging him toward a side exit, his knee buckling as they ran, ribs a constant stab. They burst outside, the sedan in sight, and Marcus shoved Jamal ahead. "Go!" A thug charged from the dark, knife gleaming, but Marcus spun, slamming the tire iron into his jaw, teeth flying as he collapsed. They reached the car, diving in as engines roared, Boone's crew piling into trucks, headlights flaring. Marcus floored it, tires spinning gravel, the mill shrinking. In the rear view as Jamal clutched the dash, breathing hard. Sirens wailed in the distance, Pierce's feds closing in, and Marcus grinned, relief flooding him, Boone's men trapped. The chase hit the highway, trucks gaining, but federal SUVs swarmed from the south, cutting them off, agents leaping out, guns drawn. Boone's thugs surrendered, cuffed on live TV, the feed cutting to Sheriff Boone arrested in kidnapping plot, his hulking figure dragged from a truck, buzz-cut bowed, pale eyes raging. Marcus pulled over, hugging Jamal tight, victory tasting sweet despite the pain, his son safe, Boone behind bars. Pierce strode up, her crisp voice cutting through. "You're a madman, Reed." But it worked. Marcus nodded, ribs throbbing, thinking it was over, the sheriff's empire crushed. Then Boone's lawyer appeared on screen, a slick man with a senator's brother's clout, bailing him out in hours, cash flowing like water. Marcus's grin faded, dread coiling tight, and that night, as he drove Jamal home, a blast rocked Birmingham. The rec center down the street erupting in flames, a black community hub reduced to rubble, screams piercing the dark. Dozens lay injured, glass and brick raining down, and a burner phone buzzed in Marcus's lap, Boone's voice crackling. "Next is your family." Marcus slammed the brakes, tires screeching, his fractured body trembling as Jamal stared, wide-eyed. The center burned, a message in fire. Boone's reach unbroken even from jail, his vengeance a bomb shattering Marcus's fleeting triumph. Pierce's feds swarmed the scene, but Marcus gripped the wheel, blood pounding in his ears. Knowing Boone had rigged this, a strike from behind bars. He pulled Jamal close, voice a vow. He won't win. But the flames roared, a promise of worse, and Marcus braced for the next blow, his fight far from over, a war now scorching his city. Marcus Reed gripped the steering wheel of Pierce's sedan, his fractured ribs grinding with every breath, his swollen knee throbbing as the Birmingham Rec Center burned in the rearview mirror, flames licking the night sky, screams of the injured, echoing through the shattered community hub. Jamal sat beside him, his teenage frame rigid, eyes wide with shock, after Sheriff Travis Boone's bomb tore through their neighborhood, a vicious strike hours after Marcus rescued him from the mill. Boone's voice still crackled in Marcus's ears from the burner phone. "Next is your family," a taunt from a man bailed out by a slick lawyer despite his arrest. Marcus floored the gas, tires humming as he sped home, blood crusting his jacket, his dark eyes burning with a father's fury. Tanya met them at the door, her face pale, hands trembling as she pulled Jamal into a fierce hug. Then Marcus, her voice breaking. "I saw it on the news. You're both alive." He nodded, ribs screaming, and guided them inside, locking the door against the chaos outside, sirens wailing as feds swarmed the rec center's ruins. His phone buzzed, General Laura Pierce's name glowing, and he answered fast, voice hoarse. "Laura, Boone bombed the rec center. He's still coming for us." Her reply snapped through, steel in every word. "I'm done playing defense. Pentagon's unleashing a task force. We're ending him." Marcus sank onto the couch, relief flickering, Tanya and Jamal close, the house a fragile sanctuary amid the war. By morning, Birmingham buzzed with federal SUVs, agents in tactical gear raiding Boone's properties, his station, his home, a rented warehouse on the city's edge. Pierce led the charge, her crisp grey suit a stark contrast to the chaos. Her dark eyes locked on Marcus as she briefed him outside the station. "We've got warrants for bribery, assaults, hate crimes. His empire's crumbling." Marcus stood tall, ribs aching, and handed her the burner phone, Boone's threat recorded. "Add kidnapping and this. Nail him shut." She nodded, a grim smile tugging her lips, and the raids hit hard. Agents hauling out files, laptops, cash stacks. Boone's deputies cuffed and cursing. Pierce called Marcus to the courthouse days later, a federal judge presiding. His gavel a thunderclap as the task force presented evidence. Eli's folder, viral bar footage, burner threats, witness tapes from beaten black men Boone had framed. Marcus took the stand. Bloodstains faded but scars visible, his voice steady, cutting through the room. Boone stopped me without cause, beat me, framed me, burned my home, took my son, bombed our community. He's a terrorist with a badge. The judge's face hardened, Boone glaring from the defense table, his hulking frame shackled, buzz cut. Bowed, pale eyes raging. Pierce piled on, her testimony a blade. Pentagon confirms Colonel Reed's service. Boone's corruption threatens national security. The gavel fell. Travis Boone, guilty on all counts, life without parole. And the courtroom erupted, cheers drowning Boone's roared curses. Marcus hugged Tanya and Jamal outside, relief washing over him. The sheriff's empire ash, his family safe. Pierce clapped his shoulder. "You're a hero, Marcus." And he smiled, ribs still tender, thinking it was over, justice carved in, stone. But that night as they slept, tires screeched outside, headlights piercing the curtains, and a dozen armed men in militia gear stormed the house, boots splintering the door, rifles glinting. Marcus jolted awake, shoving Tanya and Jamal behind him, his swollen knee buckling as he grabbed a kitchen knife, the only weapon close. The leader, a scarred man with a shaved head, barked, "Reed, you're dead!" and swung a rifle butt, cracking Marcus's jaw, blood spraying as he staggered. Tanya screamed. Jamal lunged, but they pinned him, zip-tying his wrists, boots stomping the floor. Marcus fought, slashing a thug's arm, blood gushing, but they swarmed, fists pounding his ribs, fracturing more, his knife clattering away. The scarred man knelt, breath sour with hate. "Boone sends regards from lockup. You didn't win." They dragged Marcus outside, Tanya's cries fading, and tossed him into a van, tires peeling out as the house shrank in the dark. The militia roared through Birmingham. Marcus bound in the back, pain a white-hot haze, his mind racing. Boone's lawyer had leaked his address, a final card played from jail, this crew a supremacist cell tied to the sheriff's venom. The van stopped at a wooded clearing, rifles cocked, and Marcus braced, blood dripping, defiance burning. Pierce's voice crackled in his memory. Feds are closing in, and he heard sirens, faint but swelling, agents tailing the burner's signal. The scarred man raised his rifle, grinning, but headlights blazed, federal SUVs crashing through the trees, gunfire erupting as agents swarmed. Marcus rolled free, ribs shattering his breath, and watched the militia scatter, half cut down, the rest cuffed. Pierce leapt out, gun drawn, pulling him up, her face grim. Boone orchestrated this from his cell. Phone taps confirm it. "Marcus?" Spat blood, voice a growl. "Then he's still breathing my air." She nodded, eyes cold, and the night swallowed the chaos, Marcus leaning on her, his family's screams echoing in his skull, Boone's reach a ghost that wouldn't die. Marcus Reed slumped against General Laura Pierce's arm, blood dripping from his cracked jaw onto the forest floor, his fractured ribs a jagged agony as federal agents cuffed the last of Sheriff Travis Boone's militia in the Birmingham clearing. The night pulsed with sirens, the militia's rifles glinting in the headlights of Pierce's SUVs, a brutal aftermath of Boone's jailhouse strike that nearly ended Marcus's life. His swollen knee buckled, his jacket soaked with sweat and blood. Tanya's screams from the house still ringing in his ears, Jamal's zip-tied wrists a fresh scar in his mind. Pierce steadied him, her crisp voice cutting through the haze. "You're alive, Marcus. We've got Boone's calls. He's cooked." He spat blood, voice a rasp. "Not enough. He's still pulling strings." She nodded, eyes cold, and guided him to an SUV, the drive back a blur of pain and rage, his family's safety a fraying thread. At home, Tanya rushed out, her robe stained with glass dust, pulling him into a fierce embrace. Jamal behind her, wrists raw but free, the house a wreckage of splintered wood and shattered windows. Marcus held them tight, ribs screaming, his vow a whisper. No more. Pierce stayed, agents guarding the street, but Marcus's mind churned. Boone's reach a cancer even bars couldn't contain. He'd survived the stop, the frame, the Mob, the kidnapping, the bomb, the militia. But Tanya's trembling hands, Jamal's haunted eyes, they broke something deeper. By dawn, he slipped away, telling Pierce, "Need air," and drove to the county jail, a squat fortress of concrete and steel. Boone's cell, a festering heart he had to face. His Air Force ID got him past the outer guards, a smuggled recorder tucked in his sock, a plan born of desperation. Inside, the air stank of bleach and despair, deputies eyeing him with contempt. But a bribed guard, a skinny man with shaky hands, led him to Boone's block, whispering, "5 minutes, that's it." Marcus limped in, ribs a constant stab, and found Boone sprawled on a cot, his hulking frame filling the cell, buzzcut glinting under the flickering light, pale eyes snapping up with a grin. "Well, damn boy, you're a cockroach," Boone chuckled, sitting up, his shackles clinking. Marcus stood tall, blood crusting his lip, and leaned close, voice low, lethal. "You took my son, burned my home, bombed my people. Gloat again, Boone." The sheriff's grin widened, his meaty hands flexing. "Broke your medals, trashed your life, and I'd do it twice. Black trash like you don't win." Marcus tapped his sock, the recorder rolling. Boone's words a noose tightening with every syllable. "Keep going," he said, eyes burning. Boone leaned forward, breath sour with jail slop. "Rigged cases, smashed skulls, ran this county like a king. You're just the latest to bleed." Marcus's lips curled, a cold smirk, and he streamed the audio live to a cloud Pierce monitored, Boone oblivious, his ego a trap. The sheriff stood, towering, and spat on the floor, inches from Marcus's boots. "Your kid screamed real pretty. Next time he's ash." Marcus's fists clenched, nails digging into his palms, but he held steady, the stream spiking online, notifications buzzing silently in his pocket. Boone confesses, trending fast. He slipped out as the guard hissed, "Time's up." And by noon the audio hit every screen, Boone's voice a viral venom. Protests erupting nationwide, Birmingham's streets flooding with chants. "Lock him forever," Pierce called, voice sharp. "Marcus, you're insane, but it worked. Governors suspending his allies, feds are raiding deeper." Marcus grinned, ribs aching, driving home to Tanya and Jamal, relief washing over him, Boone's support crashing. A tyrant exposed. He thought it was done, the confession a final nail, justice roaring back. Then dusk fell, and a gunshot cracked the Birmingham quiet. Tanya crumpling on the lawn, blood blooming across her chest as Marcus rushed out, her scream cut short. A sniper, Boone's last loyal deputy, vanished into the shadows. A burner phone. Dropping beside her, Boone's hacked radio cackling. "Told you I'd win, boy." Marcus fell to his knees, cradling Tanya, her pulse faint, his fractured hands slick with her blood, Jamal's wail piercing the air. He pressed the wound, shouting, "For help." Neighbors spilling out, sirens swelling as Pierce's agents raced in. Medics swarmed, lifting Tanya onto a stretcher, her eyes fluttering, alive but fading. And Marcus stumbled after, ribs shattering his breath, his voice a broken vow. "You don't die on me." Pierce grabbed his arm, face grim. "Boone's. Deputy will find him." Marcus shook her off, eyes wild, and climbed into the ambulance, Tanya's hand limp in his, the night a blur of lights and dread. Boone's laugh echoed over the radio, a ghost in the static, his vengeance a sniper's bullet from a cell, and Marcus's world teetered, rage and grief forging a new edge, a man pushed past breaking, ready to burn it all down. Marcus Reed sat in the ambulance, his fractured hands slick with Tanya's blood, her chest rising shallowly under the medic's hands as sirens wailed through Birmingham's dusk, Boone's sniper bullet a jagged wound threatening to steal her life. His swollen knee throbbed, ribs grinding with every jolt, Jamal's tear-streaked face beside him clutching his mother's limp fingers, the hospital a blur of white lights and antiseptic as they rushed her into surgery. Marcus slumped in the waiting room, blood crusting his jacket, his dark eyes hollow. Boone's hacked radio cackle, "Told you I'd win," a ghost in his skull. General Laura Pierce stormed in, her grey suit rumpled, her voice sharp. "Marcus, she's strong. We're hunting the deputy." He stood, ribs screaming, voice a growl. "Not enough, Laura. Boone's still breathing my air." She grabbed his arm, pulling him to a quiet hall, her eyes blazing. "I've got something bigger. Follow me." He limped after, Jamal staying with a nurse, and they drove to the Pentagon's regional office, a stark building humming with urgency. Agents swarming screens. Pierce led him to a war room, maps and files sprawling, her tone steel. Boone's militia ties go deeper than we thought. A DC contractor, rogue, funded his hate, supplied the sniper. I need you to leak it. Marcus's jaw tightened, blood pounding in his ears, and he scanned the files, names like Vortex Security, cash trails to Boone's cell, photos of suited men shaking his hand. "Why me?" he rasped, ribs aching. Pierce's lips thinned. A confession brewing, and she leaned close, voice low. "Because you're the face of this fight. Press trusts you." He nodded, rage forging focus, and took the files, uploading them to a burner laptop, his cracked fingers typing fast, a press release blasting Vortex's name, Boone's puppet strings, the sniper's orders, live to every news outlet. Within hours, screens lit up. Pentagon contractor linked to sheriff's terror, protests swelling nationwide, DC suits scrambling, Vortex's stock crashing. Pierce's task force raided their offices, agents hauling execs in cuffs. Boone's cell searched, burner phones seized, his empire imploding. Marcus watched from the war room, ribs a dull roar, relief flooding as Tanya's surgeon called. "She's stable, pulled through," and he wept, Jamal rushing in, hugging him tight, victory tasting bittersweet. Pierce clapped his shoulder. "You did it, Marcus. Boone's done Vortex too." He drove home, Tanya alive, Jamal safe, the Birmingham sky bruised purple, a hero's weight settling on his battered frame. But as they sat in the quiet, Pierce lingered, her face tight, and Marcus caught the flicker in her eyes, a truth unspoken. "What aren't you saying?" he asked, voice low, ribs aching. She exhaled, slow, deliberate, and sat across from him, hands clasped. "I knew Boone's reach early, Marcus. Vortex flagged months ago. I used you, bait to draw them out, expose the network." The words hit like a fist, his cracked jaw clenching, blood pulsing in his temples. "You let him burn my home, take my son, shoot my wife?" Pierce's gaze didn't waver, steel meeting fire. "To stop a cancer bigger than Boone. You're a soldier, you know the math, one life for thousands." Marcus stood, ribs flaring, towering over her, voice a snarl. "My family's not your pawns." She rose, unflinching, her voice steady. "You're a hero because of it. Boone's gone, Vortex is indicted, militia's crumbling, you won." He turned away, blood on his hands, hers now too, Tanya's faint pulse, a cost he'd never forgive. Jamal watched, eyes wide, and Marcus pulled him close, a shield against the betrayal. Pierce left, her footsteps fading, and Marcus sank onto the couch, ribs a constant stab, his victory a hollow crown. Boone's cell was bare now, his allies jailed, but Pierce's gambit scarred deeper, a system he'd served turning him into bait. He stared out the window, Birmingham quiet, the rec center's ashes a reminder, and vowed to dismantle it all, not just Boone's hate, but the machine. That fed it. A new war dawning in his chest, his fight far from over. Marcus Reed's journey teaches us resilience against systemic racism can turn victims into warriors. Facing a racist sheriff's relentless assaults, from a gunpoint stop to a sniper's bullet, Marcus showed that courage isn't just enduring pain, but striking back with truth. His story reveals how power, when corrupt, poisons communities, yet one voice, amplified by evidence and grit, can shatter it. Boone's downfall proves accountability is possible, even when the system bends to shield its own. Pierce's betrayal, using Marcus as bait, underscores a bitter lesson. Allies can wield you as a tool, sacrificing personal cost for a greater good. It's a reminder to question trust, even in victory. Marcus's fight wasn't just for his family, but for every black life crushed by prejudice, showing collective strength can rise from individual defiance. The deepest takeaway is justice isn't handed over. It's forged through sacrifice, pain, and an unyielding will to expose rot, no matter who holds the reins. What's your take on Marcus's battle? Comment below if you think one person can topple a corrupt empire. Hit like if his resilience inspires you. And subscribe for more stories of justice prevailing. Share this to spark a conversation about standing up to power. Thanks for joining this journey. May you find strength to face your own storms and fight for what's right.